Welcome to Real English Voices. I'm your host, Tom.
And I am Maria. Hello, everyone. It is so good to be back here with you today.
Ria, how are you feeling today? You look like you have a lot of energy.
I am feeling fantastic, Tom. Honestly, I had a great coffee this morning. The sun is shining, and I am just really excited about today's topic. You told me a little bit about it before we started recording, and I have to say, I think this is going to be one of our most important episodes yet.
I completely agree. Usually we talk about grammar or vocabulary or idioms. We talk about the mechanics of English. But today we are going deep. We are going below the surface. Today we are talking about the engine that drives everything. We are talking about the one mindset that changed my life. And I think it changed yours too, Ria.
Oh, absolutely. It's funny you say that because when I look back at my own journey of learning English and just learning anything in life, there's a clear line. There's the before and there's the after. And the difference wasn't a textbook, it wasn't a teacher, it was the way I thought about myself.
Exactly. That is the key, the way you view yourself. So, let's paint a picture for our listeners. I want to take you back to when I was about 20 years old. I was trying to learn a second language, Spanish, actually. And Ria, I was miserable.
Miserable? Why? You're usually such a positive guy.
I was miserable because I was obsessed with perfection. Every time I opened my mouth to speak, I felt like I was on a stage. I felt like there was a spotlight on me, and everyone was waiting for me to make a mistake. So, do you know what I did?
I can guess you probably didn't speak at all.
Precisely. I stayed silent. I would write perfect sentences in my notebook. I would get A-plus grades on my grammar tests. But if someone said hola to me on the street, I would freeze. I was paralyzed by the fear of looking stupid.
Oh, Tom, I relate to that so much. It's that feeling of your throat closing up. I remember when I first moved to the city and had to use English in real life. I went to a bakery to buy a simple loaf of bread. I rehearsed the sentence in my head 10 times. I would like a loaf of bread, please. I would like a loaf of bread, please. But when I got to the counter, the girl smiled at me and my mind went blank. I just pointed and said, bread. I felt so small.
That feeling of being small, that's exactly what we need to talk about. That's the result of what we call a fixed mindset. It's the belief that your intelligence or your ability is a fixed trait. You either have it or you don't. And if you make a mistake, it proves you don't have it. It's a trap.
It really is a trap. Because if you believe that mistakes mean you're stupid, you will avoid mistakes at all costs. And if you avoid mistakes, you avoid learning. It's a vicious cycle.
Right. So the mindset shift, the one thing that changed my life, was moving from that fixed mindset to a growth mindset. But it's more than just a buzzword. It was a specific realization. I realized that confusion is not a sign of failure. Confusion is the sensation of learning.
Wait, say that again? That's powerful. Confusion is the sensation of learning?
Yes, if you're confused or if you're struggling, it doesn't mean you're failing. It means your brain is working. It means you're stretching. When I finally understood that, I stopped trying to be perfect and started trying to be messy. I started embracing the mess.
Embracing the mess. I love that. It sounds so liberating. But it's hard to do, isn't it? Our egos are so fragile. We want to look smart.
It's incredibly hard. But let's pause for a second. We've used some really interesting words in this first part of the conversation. I want to make sure our listeners really caught them.
Summary of the 3 hardest words. 1. Paralyzed, meaning to be unable to move or act, usually due to fear or shock. Example, I was paralyzed by the fear of looking stupid. 2. Vicious cycle, meaning a negative situation where one problem causes another problem, which then causes the first problem to happen again, making it worse and worse. Example, avoiding mistakes prevents learning, which creates a vicious cycle. 3. Liberating, meaning making you feel free and able to behave as you like. Example, embracing the mess sounds so liberating. Okay, Tom, looking at those words, especially paralyzed, here's my question for you. You said you were paralyzed by fear. What was the exact moment or specific trigger that finally broke that paralysis for you? Was there one day where you just snapped out of it?
That is such a great question, Ria. It wasn't one single day where the clouds parted and everything was perfect. It was more of a slow realization. But there was a specific incident. I was traveling in Spain, and I was lost. I needed to find the train station. I saw an old man on a bench. I knew my Spanish was terrible, but I had a choice: stay lost and miss my train, or speak broken Spanish and look foolish.
The pressure was on. What happened?
I walked up to him. I was sweating, and I said something like, "Train, where, go, me." It was grammatically horrible. It was embarrassing. But the old man, he didn't laugh. He didn't pull out a red pen to grade me. He just smiled, pointed down the road, and said, "Allí, allí, there, there." And in that moment, I realized something profound. The goal of language isn't perfection. The goal is connection.
The goal is connection. That gives me goosebumps, Tom. It shifts the focus completely. Instead of thinking, how do I sound? You start thinking, did he understand me? It takes the pressure off you and puts the focus on the other person.
Exactly. It makes you less selfish in a way. Perfectionism is actually very self-centered. You're constantly thinking about yourself, your image, your ego. When you focus on connection, you're thinking about the bridge between you and the other person. And once I built that bridge, even a clumsy one, I felt free.
I think that is the growth mindset in action. You valued the result, getting to the train station, more than you valued looking smart. I remember when I started making YouTube videos in English, I was terrified of the comment section. I thought people would tear me apart for my accent.
And did they?
Some did. There are always a few unkind people, but the vast majority, they didn't care about my accent. They cared about the message I was telling. They cared about the story I was telling. I realized that my accent was actually part of my identity. It was proof that I was brave enough to learn a second language. That shifted my mindset from shame to pride.
From shame to pride. That is beautiful. You know, there's a phrase I tell my students all the time now. Fail fast, fail often.
Fail fast, fail often. It sounds counterintuitive. We're taught in school that failure is bad. If you fail a test, you're in trouble.
I know, and school systems have done a lot of damage in that regard. In the real world, especially in language learning, failure is just data. Every time you make a mistake, you're gathering data on what doesn't work. If you say a word and someone looks confused, that's data. You adjust and you try again. If you never speak, you get zero data. You remain stagnant.
Stagnant. That's a scary word. It means standing still, like a pond of water that never moves and gets dirty. I don't want to be stagnant.
No one does. But to avoid stagnation, you have to be willing to feel uncomfortable. There's this concept called the zone of proximal development. It's a fancy term, but it basically means the sweet spot between what you can do easily and what you can't do at all. That sweet spot is where you struggle. If you aren't struggling a little bit, you aren't in the zone. You aren't growing.
So, if I'm reading a book and I understand every single word, I'm probably not learning much.
Precisely. You're practicing, which is good for confidence, but you aren't growing. But if you read a book where you understand maybe 80% and you have to fight for that other 20%, that's where the magic happens. That friction causes growth.
Friction causes growth. It's like going to the gym, right? If the weights are too light, your muscles don't get stronger. You need that resistance.
That is the perfect analogy. English is a muscle. And the mindset we're talking about today is simply the willingness to lift the heavy weight, to sweat, to shake a little bit, and to trust that this pain is actually progress.
It's easy to say this when we're sitting here comfortable with our microphones, but for our listeners who are driving to work or cooking dinner and feeling discouraged, what do they do tomorrow morning? How do they wake up and switch this mindset on?
That's the practical side. We need to bridge the gap between theory and action. But before we give them the practical steps, let's review the vocabulary we just used. There were some heavy hitters in there. Summary of the 3 hardest words. 1. Counterintuitive, meaning something that feels opposite to what common sense would expect, something that doesn't seem logical at first. Example, failing on purpose sounds counterintuitive, but it helps you learn. 2. Stagnant, meaning showing no activity, dull and sluggish, not moving or developing. Example, if you never speak, you get 0 data and your progress remains stagnant.
Number 3, friction, meaning, in this context, it means the resistance or difficulty that occurs when trying to do something hard. Example, that friction causes growth, just like lifting weights. Okay, Tom, looking at counterintuitive, here is my question. You are telling people to embrace failure. But for someone who has a job interview in English next week or a big presentation, the stakes are very high. Failure could mean losing a job opportunity. How does this mindset apply when the consequences are real and serious?
That is the million-dollar question, Ria, and I'm glad you asked it, because we have to be realistic. We cannot always fail happy when our job is on the line. However, the mindset shift actually helps you perform better in those high-pressure situations.
How so?
When you're in a fixed mindset, you're terrified of the outcome. You're thinking, I must not mess up. That anxiety consumes your brain power. Your brain is so busy being afraid that it has less energy to actually process English. But if you go into that interview with a growth mindset, you think, I will do my best to communicate. If I make a mistake, I will correct it and keep moving. You're calmer, and when you're calmer, you speak better.
So the acceptance of potential failure actually makes failure less likely?
Bingo! It's the paradox of control. By letting go of the need for total control, you actually gain more control. It changes your energy. People can feel your energy. If you're in an interview and you stumble on a word, but you smile, correct yourself, and keep going with confidence, the interviewer sees resilience. They see a problem solver. If you stumble and panic, they see insecurity.
That's so true. I've interviewed people before. I remember one candidate who didn't know the answer to a question. Instead of panicking, he just said, "That's a fascinating question. I don't know the specific answer right now, but here's how I would find out." I hired him. I hired him because of his attitude, not his knowledge.
See? That's the mindset. I don't know yet. That little word yet is powerful. Dweck, the researcher who coined these terms, talks about the power of yet. I'm not fluent yet. I don't understand phrasal verbs yet. It leaves the door open for the future.
I love the word yet. It's full of hope. It's a bridge to tomorrow.
It really is. So let's talk about daily habits. How do we live this? For me, it started with changing my internal monologue. We all have a voice in our heads. Mine used to be a bully. It would say, Tom, you sounded like an idiot. I had to fire that bully and hire a coach.
Fire the bully and hire a coach. I like that visualization. What does the coach say?
The coach says, okay, Tom, you messed up that verb tense. No big deal. Let's note it down and practice it 3 times tonight. Good effort on speaking up, though. The coach is kind but disciplined.
That's so important. Self-compassion. I think language learners are the hardest people on themselves. We expect to speak a foreign language as well as our mother tongue, which we have been speaking for 20 or 30 years. It's an unfair comparison.
Completely unfair. You're comparing your Chapter 1 to someone else's Chapter 20, or you're comparing your second language to your first language. You have to respect the journey. You have to fall in love with the process, not just the result.
Falling in love with the process. That reminds me of when I started cooking. At first, I just wanted the food on the table, but eventually I started enjoying the chopping of the vegetables, the smelling of the spices. When I enjoyed the cooking, the food tasted better.
And English is the same. If you only study because you want a certificate, it's torture. But if you study because you're curious about how these strange sounds come together to create meaning, If you find joy in learning a new idiom, then it becomes a hobby, not a chore.
Tom, I think we're getting to the heart of it. It's about curiosity over judgment.
Curiosity over judgment. Put that on a t-shirt. That's the mantra. When you hear a new word, don't judge yourself for not knowing it. Be curious about what it means. When you make a mistake, don't judge yourself. Be curious about why you made it.
It sounds so much lighter. It takes the weight off your shoulders.
It does, and that lightness allows you to fly. You know, we're coming to the end of our time today, but I want to leave our listeners with a challenge.
I love challenges. What is it?
For the next 24 hours, I want you to catch yourself, catch your thoughts. Every time you think, I can't, add the word yet. Every time you make a mistake, instead of saying sorry, try saying, thank you for being patient while I learn.
Oh, that's a good one. Replacing sorry with thank you, it changes the dynamic completely.
It empowers you. Listeners, we believe in you, not because your English is perfect, but because you are here. You are listening. You are trying. That means you already have the seed of this mindset. You just need to water it.
Absolutely. And remember, every expert was once a beginner. Every fluent speaker once struggled to say hello. You are on the right path.
Thank you for joining us on Real English Voices. This conversation has been a highlight of my week, Ria.
Mine too, Tom. Thank you for sharing your story, and thank you to everyone listening. Keep speaking, keep making mistakes, and keep growing.
See you next time.
Bye.